Welcome back to the second edition of our Best Bets episode. Something, as we've said, that we're going to continue here twice a week. Try to do it on Tuesday and Friday, releasing them on Wednesday and Saturday before games. Um, with our best picks of the weekend or the week, and maybe some leans for some games that are bigger games, but we might not have any action on. Um, but as always, you can always keep up with the action that we actually do have um, through our Discord, which is where we post everything before we actually do any write ups about our picks. Or you can follow our action account at Mainly Hoops One to keep tabs on our bets, um, and you can see how we're doing. Currently we're up 7.1 units on the season so far, so off to a solid start. Um, and another thing, all the picks that we are giving out, they're completely free. Right? You don't have to pay to be in the Discord. That's the nice thing about it, right? And you're going to see all the picks on Discord first before you see them anywhere else. So if you're in the Discord, you're going to see those things the soonest. Um, but as for this weekend, we've got some solid games on deck. Uh, Starting tomorrow, or not starting, but I guess we're ending the night. We're going to start here, ending the night with Kentucky Gonzaga in Seattle. Gonzaga laying 5.5.
Yeah. Before I start, definitely join the Discord. Just because lines are going to move as well. Like we're gonna have picks in sometimes the night before, but mostly in the morning. And our articles don't really get released until like usually around 12 or 1 o'clock every day, like 4 or 5 hours before tip off. And lines may have moved by then. So just make sure to get in there so you can get the most value that you can possibly get. But as for the Kentucky Gonzaga game, more of a lean for me here. Talked about it's going to be a super fun up and down game with I think both offenses have big time advantages in this game. Kentucky in the dribble handoff game, really spacing out these Gonzaga bigs of Ek and Huff, whichever one. I think Ek is probably going to be the big that plays a little bit more here, just because I think him in the post up game is he's going to be able to expose these Kentucky bigs to an extent. I don't think Amari Williams is like super physical down there, but both sides in the front court have their advantages with Gonzaga getting spaced out a little bit there as well. But the thing is, if you have any flaws against Gonzaga, like they're going to expose you in any way, like through the post-up game. Like if they're going to have efficiency there, Kentucky's probably going to be forced to send a second guy, and it's going to lead to open shots for guys like Hickman, Nembhard, Caleb Battle, and even Ajayi a little bit. So I do think you see Kentucky's defense get exposed a bit more. I don't really think Clemson exposed it as much as it could have been exposed. So that's something to look out for. I would look probably to bet the over. I actually didn't see what the total was. I believe it's around
166.5.
Yeah, I think that would be my lean, but I get a little bit weary on neutral floors. Like the shooting could get a little bit funky there. But both teams are due for negative shooting regression defensively. Like I think they're both top 10 in 3-point defense in the country. Granted, I think they do a pretty solid job of getting out to shooters. Nobody's going to give up 25% from three throughout an entire season. And now they're playing arguably their best opponent of the year. So I would expect some regression to the mean in that area. But if I was to pick a side, I would take the Zags, as I still think Kentucky is a tiny bit overvalued still. Gonzaga's hungry for another win. They had a disappointing battle for Atlantis for their standards, and I think they're looking for another big win in Seattle. Behind basically a home environment, playing in Seattle. Kentucky will have some fans there, as they are all the way across the country. But I think I like the Zags here. And one player prop to monitor is Graham Eke's over. I think he gets a way more run than Braden Huff in this game, because I don't think Huff guards on the perimeter well enough. And I do think Kentucky's big men can guard Huff in space, which is where he can create his mismatches. Guys like Williams and Garrison are going to be fine out on the perimeter. So I do like Eke's over. He's going to have a ton of efficiency in the post. I think I've seen a 14.5. I would bet it there. I'm not sure how much higher I would bet it, just because he doesn't get the 30 minutes a game volume that he used to get. He's sitting around 20 to 25, but I think he has enough efficiency to stay on the floor, and they're going to play through him tomorrow. So definitely Eke's over is a play. I believe it's 14.5 minus 110. And I would lean Gonzaga. Probably not going to make a play unless there's like some action that trickles this down to -4 or 4.5, and then I'd probably make a play there.
Yeah. For those of you who are looking to place some action on Gonzaga, uh, just so you're aware, there are some lines out there already that have pushed to 7.5.
Oh,
So there's been some pretty heavy movement for the Zags. I just pulled it up and saw at least one or two 7.5s out there. So uh, that line's getting big.
yeah,
Um,
those they move quickly too. Like sharp action comes in, those will move very fast. I Gonzaga is like I think the sharp side in this game, but at 7.5, it's a definitely a I'm not touching that at all.
yeah, yeah. Now Ohio State, they lost by 24 points to Wisconsin in their first Big Ten game. Uh, they lost to Maryland. Sorry. They play Rutgers tomorrow. Uh, Rutgers is plus 6.5 against Ohio State here.
Yeah, and yeah, give me Rutgers here. I still think Ohio State's overvalued, even despite getting their doors blown off by Maryland on the road. I think they lost by like 24. Um, and I think, yeah, they're going to continue to be overvalued, and we should take advantage of this until further notice, or the markets like adjust a lot more than they are right now. Ohio State doesn't really have any quality big men unless you want to call Sean Stewart a quality center, which I don't think he is
No,
at all.
no, he's not quality anything.
Fair enough. He's good on the glass, but that's
He's
about it.
probably he's probably a quality man. I'll give him that.
He could be, but I guess we'll never know. So, but this is very bad news if you don't have a rim protector. You're playing against probably the best downhill attacking guard in the country in Dylan Harper. He's super physical, and like I don't think they have a real matchup for him. I think he's going to get pretty much anything he wants, whether that's getting to the line or finishing over the top of a. Like they're going to play small. They're going to play 6'6" at the center position at times with Devin Royal and Evan Mahaffey. I don't think they're going to provide any resistance to Harper. Yeah, and this defense of Ohio State's overvalued in general. Teams can't buy a three against this team, and I don't really think they're doing that great of a job of closing out to shooters. Like they've teams have missed a lot of unguarded threes against them, and there's still a lot of negative regression coming their way. And I like Rutgers in the underdog role way more, as they typically have more star power and more talent than teams that they play, and I think they have more here with Harper and Ace Bailey. I mean, Ace Bailey is a bit of a wild card, so he could shoot you out of a game, but he's super talented, and I'd rather get him in an underdog role than a big favorite, as it's portrayed in their splits this season. The only issue I'd have with Rutgers is the defense, but I always trust Steve Peichel to get the job done on the defensive end. It's not like this defense is ever going to be a disaster, and they've been playing smaller with Martini at the 5 at times, and I think that's going to be perfectly fine in this matchup to be able to match up with the perimeter firepower of Ohio State. They shoot the lights out from 3, and I think playing small is probably the way to go. You know, you have a floor spacing 5 in Martini as well to even like space out Sean Stewart when he's in the game to provide literally zero rim protection that they really don't already have. So yeah, give me Rutgers plus 6.5 here. I have seen it move down a bit. So hopefully there's still a 6.5, maybe a 6 out there. I would bet it to 5.5, and that's as far as I would go.
Yeah. Uh, Definitely, I would be on that Rutgers side as well, but definitely one thing to monitor, I think, here is Ohio State in a bounce back spot. Like they lost by 24 in their Big Ten opener. This game's at Ohio State, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, playing their Big Ten opener or home opener, they're going to probably be motivated after getting embarrassed against Maryland the other night. So, be cautious, I think, depending on where this number ends up, because I do think that Ohio State could be in for a bounce back victory here.
For sure. Yeah, they could be. I'm more just playing the number here. I have this
Yeah,
closer to 4.5 as opposed
yeah,
to 6.5 is what I got it at. So
yeah,
yeah, definitely more of a number play. But I mean, the spot you could say it's Ohio State. It's an Ohio State spot.
yeah. Now another game up in Milwaukee, as we talked about on the episode yesterday. We've got Wisconsin and Marquette. Marquette's -7 in this game. Pretty big number for a Wisconsin team that's had some quality wins and played well.
Yeah, I mean, just I'm going to fade Marquette again. I mean, I've been doing it all season long. And the biggest reason is the injury to Chase Ross, it doesn't look like he's going to play in this game. And if he does play, he's most likely not going to be 100%. And the guard depth for Marquette drops off significantly after Ross. Guys like Zayd Lowry and Trey Norman are going to have to play big minutes in this game for a team that's like, it's predicated off of their ability to take care of the ball and their guards being able to make plays for others off the dribble. And that's a big loss. That's a big loss with Chase Ross because Lowry and Norman haven't really performed too well this season. But I do expect Cam Jones to have a big day, and I will look to take his point total over. I believe I've seen it at 18.5. I'd probably play it up to 20.5. Like
Play it double that.
Like who's going to guard him in this game?
Play it double that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a ladder. I mean, maybe if you can find somewhere where you can get 30 plus. There's not many books that offer that, but there's nobody that can guard Cam Jones in this game. And Wisconsin's a super conservative defense, especially in ball screens. They're going to play drop pretty much all the time. They're not super aggressive. They're not looking to force turnovers. Jones is going to have the ball in his hands even more now that Ross is out because they're not going to trust Norman and Lowry to take the ball handling duties. And Jones probably plays all 40 minutes as long as this game stays tight. But as for the side with Wisconsin, I think they take care of the ball at an elite rate, as they always do under Greg Gard. And that's where Marquette's defense creates their most value. And Wisconsin's beaten them 3 straight seasons, and that's the biggest reason they've been able to take care of the ball and create efficiency on the interior. They also have the glass advantage in this game, as a lot of teams or a lot of power conference teams do against Marquette. So those two areas are going to be big, and that's Marquette's kryptonite. Teams that take care of the ball and get on the glass. So for me, I'll take Wisco plus the 7.
Yeah, the only way especially if Chase Ross doesn't go, the only way I could see Marquette covering this is if Cam Jones has the game that we've kind of talked about him potentially having in this game, where he goes for 35, shoots it at 60-65% from the field, and just carries Marquette to a home victory. But I think Wisconsin, I think their offense is actually good enough now where they can hang around if Cam Jones goes crazy. So I think this number is pretty big. And as we've even said, right, Wisconsin's beaten Marquette 3 straight years. So this is a chance for them to win 4 in a row, and they're +7. That seems like a big number.
Yeah, and Greg Gard, great as an underdog. When he gets more than 5.5 points, he is 24-13 against the spread in his career. So I like backing coaches that can cover these bigger numbers, and it checks out. They play a super slow pace, they take care of the ball, and they're good on the glass. And they have the firepower to keep up with Cam Jones and David Joplin and Stevie Mitchell. So I honestly think they have the more talented offensive group as a whole, as opposed to Marquette being mostly just Cam Jones at the moment.
Right. Yeah. They're gonna need Joplin to play well, especially if Chase Ross can't go. He needs to get on a consistent track shooting the ball anyway, because if he's not giving them any offense, they're in some trouble.
Absolutely, I agree.
Now, also tomorrow we have Stanford at Cal. Kyle Smith now coaching at Stanford. He's +3 at Cal.
Yeah, and this is mostly a bet on Kyle Smith as an underdog. He's been fantastic throughout his career. I believe he sits at 49-34 against the spread as an underdog. His teams always come into seasons extremely undervalued. It never looks like they have a ton of talent on their rosters, but Kyle Smith always gets the most out of them. He's got guys with positional length and size that you don't really hear about preseason, and then they kind of just get their way played into the rotation, and they contribute on both sides of the ball, whether that's getting on the glass on both ends or just defending in space super well. And, he's got more guys like that again. And he has the best player in this game, and Maxime Reynaud, who's just been, he's one of the most underrated centers in the entire country. I mean, he's been dominant. I believe he's still averaging 20 and 10 this year. So he should be able to expose this Cal group that, they're starting Matty Sissoko at the 5. He's a little bit undersized. I think, and Cal doesn't like to send a second guy, but they're absolutely going to have to send a second guy at Maxime Reynaud, and that's going to lead to some open looks for some shooting for guys like Benny Gieler and Oziah Sellers. So I definitely like Stanford in this spot. I like the number a lot. I'd have this closer to a pick. I'm super low on Cal, and I just think there's a lot of untapped potential with this Stanford team. And when you're getting Kyle Smith as a dog, that's always the area that I'm going to look first.
Yeah, not very high on this Cal team. So, and as good as Reynaud's been, this seems like a good spot to get Stanford plus points against a team that, quite frankly, I don't think is very good.
Yeah, and I'm also not afraid of Cal's home floor at all. And the travel here isn't very significant, so I wouldn't bake a ton into home court. Obviously, you need to bake in a little bit just because Cal is comfortable playing in their home arena, but I think it's being baked in a bit too much in this matchup.
Yeah. I agree with you. It probably is closer to a pick 'em. Now, Arizona, who we have slandered a bunch, they are 25.5-point favorites tomorrow against Southern Utah. So this feels like a spot for them where they finally get right a little bit. They bounce back off of their showing out there at Battle for Atlantis, and they get right and win against a much weaker opponent in a convincing way.
Yeah, it's definitely a get right spot. And they're also very good in this spot historically. They beat up on a couple bye game opponents early in the year before their downfall. So Tommy Lloyd it's a small sample size, but he's 9-5 in his career as a double-digit non-conference favorite, and it checks out. They want to play super fast and they dominate the glass. That's something I'm always looking for in a heavy favorite against an inferior team. So, and both teams want to run in this game, and that's pretty key when dealing with a bigger spread. It creates more possessions and it gives more opportunities for the better team to break away, which, seems pretty obvious. But Arizona should pound Southern Utah on the glass. Arizona's a lead on both ends, while Southern Utah is 286th nationally in defensive rebound rate. And they also have turnover issues. They turn the ball over at the 348th rate in the country, which is going to create more runouts for Arizona. So, yeah, it's mostly a get right spot for a team that's been disappointed. They're going to be angry here. And I do expect them to win by at least 30 here in Tucson.
Yeah, I don't really have many thoughts on this game. I definitely can see that, and probably Tommy Lloyd is crossing his fingers that is exactly what happens, because they need a comfortable victory to get his team back in kind of the right headspace, I think, as they approach conference play.
Yeah, I mean, the only problem I would have is the depth of Arizona not being super great. Like the guard depth isn't great. If they call off the dogs with 5 minutes left, like I would get a little bit worried if they're only up 30, because this depth is pretty weak. But I do expect the starters to stay in for at least 30 to 35 minutes, and hopefully they get up 30 to 35, and they should cruise to a victory here.
Yeah. Now, Miami plays against Clemson. Clemson, we were on the other night in their big win over Kentucky. I was on Miami the other night to cover against Arkansas, and they enter tomorrow with the same spread as they had against Arkansas, +5 against Clemson tomorrow. And this was one of the first lines that jumped out to me as like red alert, red alert. I think Miami might finally get a win here. Maybe. I think they cover. Again, not sure they're going to get a win. I think they'll cover. But this line feels too big.
Yeah, this was a painful one to make. Like I really didn't want to make this bet because I'm still low on Miami, but this line's a bit out of hand in a spot that I would consider like I'd call it a kitchen sink spot. Like they're going to throw everything at Clemson in this game. They're coming off 5 losses in a row. Like they had a really bad performance at the Charleston Classic. They lose to Charleston Southern, and then they had Arkansas on the ropes, and they kind of gave it up. Stayed inside the number, but I don't think they really care if they stay inside the number at this point. Well, I would hope they wouldn't, because that would not be good for them. But they have some advantages in this game on the perimeter against Clemson's like shell-like defense. They like to take away the rim. They protect the paint. But Miami has plenty of firepower on the perimeter to go over the top of this defense in guys like Nigel Pack, Jalen Blackman, Cleveland, and Jaleel Bethia. So it's typically been a kind of a bad matchup for Clemson. I believe Miami beat them at home last year pretty handily. So I do expect them to hopefully they have a better shooting day than they've had. And they're due for some negative shooting regression, although the perimeter defense hasn't been good. Like everyone's shooting 50% from 3 against this team right now. And yeah, Clemson, even though it's their ACC opener, I think it's definitely a letdown situation for them here in this spot. And Miami has the size up front to at least contend with Clemson's bigs. They have some positional size up front with Lynn Kidd, with Brandon Johnson and Matthew Cleveland. I think they can absolutely battle Shefflin and lock it on the glass. They might not win the rebound battle, but if they keep it close, that's an advantage for Miami. So, and this is also mostly a play on the number. +5 at home seems a bit ridiculous, and it's the ultimate buy low situation.
In a must win for them. They've lost 5 in a row.
5 in a row, yeah. If they aren't motivated here, like you got to shut it down. Like your season's over if you lose this game. They're probably not an at-large team at this point anyway.
There's a fine line between being motivated, I think, and then just going into shutdown and like wishing the season is over. And they're starting to get to the point of flirting with that, right? Where they're 3-5, they've lost 5 in a row. They had higher expectations coming in. So if they drop another one at home again in their ACC opener, they're going to be looking at a team who half of them might be already booking their trips to Cancun in March, and the other half of them who are motivated, and then maybe the walk-ons are like, come on, guys. It's just it's not setting up for it's setting up for Larinaga to lose this team, I think, if they don't get right here soon.
Yeah, it's 100% a desperation spot. And I think half this roster could probably afford their own trip to Cancun too. Nigel Pack got a bag. I think Lynn Kidd got some good money as well. So
Jalen Blackman,
probably Bethia.
From what I've heard, Jalen Blackman got some solid money. So
yeah, they can all afford their own separate trips. Maybe not the walk-ons, but I mean, Coach L, I think has his trip already planned, and I think it might be for good. I think he's kind of lost his fastball to an extent, at least. He doesn't seem all that interested right now.
Yeah. There's another game I want to just briefly mention tomorrow. Providence playing Rhode Island tomorrow. Rhode Island 8-0. This is a team we haven't talked about at all, but they're 8-0. Granted, they haven't played really anybody. If you've looked at their schedule, I think the best team they've played is I don't even know.
They beat the crap out of Charleston.
Yeah,
I think that's probably their best win of the year. Which is it's not a bad win by any means, but I mean to beat them by 30 plus was
the other night they did beat Yale by 6, decent win. But other than that, like UT Arlington, Detroit Mercy, Fairfield Holy Cross, Franklin Pierce. So nothing too crazy. But they're here against a Providence team who lost a few in a row, but then whooped BYU in their last game by 19. I think one of the things to monitor in this game is the rebounding battle, because Rhode Island is in the bottom 25 of the country in offensive rebounds allowed per game, over 13 a game, I believe. And Providence averages over 13 offensive rebounds a game themselves. So that's definitely something to monitor here. But Rhode Island's offense has been lethal. they're almost shooting. They're 51% from the field, 39.8% from three, 72% from the line, averaging 89.6 points per game. They've been they've been crazy. Granted, they haven't played anyone, but if you can shoot it, like that travels. They're going to be playing better defenders tomorrow. Providence defense is very solid, but they enter this game as there's still some 2 point lines out there, but I've started to see some 1.5 point underdog lines out there for Rhode Island. Uh, this Providence team, I'm not that high on. They'd lost three in a row. I believe they lost to Davidson by they lost to
A lot.
Davidson by 11. Lost to Indiana, who hasn't looked very good, by 16. Um, Lost to Oklahoma only by 2, and they've been pretty good. But overall, like I'm not super high on this Providence team, and this seems like a sell spot on Providence to me after their big win over BYU by 19 in their last game, and probably a lot of people looking at that Rhode Island team at 8-0, but they haven't played anyone and saying, okay, like this is where they finally lose. So to me, this is something I'm monitoring. Um, I definitely lean on the side of the Rams here, behind a strong offensive output. They have 5 guys averaging over 11 points a game. So uh, I look for Rhode Island to play well here again and pick up the upset, as short underdogs.
Yeah, I would agree. And they're coming in this game 8-0, but I think they're going to be super motivated against an in-state rival, if you want to call it that. Like they're coming into this game as little brother, and they want to prove that they're the best team in the state, honestly. So I do think it's a heavy motivational spot, playing against a team that was coming off an emotional desperation spot. Really, like if you lose 4 in a row, like your at large hopes are basically out the window, especially when you go into Big East play, like not really having a ton of opportunities against like the bottom half of the conference, although they might be a part of that bottom half. There's just not as many good opportunities. They're coming off a statement win for them. So yeah, I would be on the URI side. It's a game that I'm probably gonna, sit out and watch from the sidelines and hope I see some good things there out of URI. Because they
Yeah,
can compete. They
yeah,
can compete in the A10 as well. Like the A10 isn't like super. There's not a ton of depth there. So yeah, I think they could compete right at the top with like VCU and Dayton.
yeah. I agree. So Sunday, there's some other good games as we talked about in the episode. Maryland's playing in the other previous episode. Maryland's playing at Purdue. Not going to get into anything on betting with that game. UConn, Texas. That was another game that we were like, we could see this going either way. But there are a couple of games that we have some action on. We have Texas Tech and Texas A&M. This game being played on a neutral site.
Yeah, I believe this one's in Fort Worth.
Yeah,
The projected spread here is Tech minus a half, which like obviously it's not going to come out minus a half, but I do think you'll see it -1, -1.5 in favor of Texas Tech, and I do like that side here. We talked about it on the last pod, but I do think the matchup favors them pretty significantly here. Texas Tech has a bunch of spot up shooting. They profile in the 96th percentile in spot up opportunities per synergy. And guys like Chance McMillan, Kerwin Walton, and Christian Anderson are going to be in great spots to succeed here against an A&M defense that they rank in the 94th percentile in spot up opportunities allowed. So it just feels like kind of like the perfect storm for Texas Tech's offense here. And yeah, A&M just tries to take away the rim at all costs. And I think that's probably going to come back to bite them here in a game that, Texas Tech has a ton of firepower out on the perimeter. And I do think Texas Tech can compete with A&M on the glass. JT Toppin and Federico can get all over the offensive glass against this team. Like A&M, as good as they are on the offensive glass, they're a bit exposable on the defensive glass. I think they're 200th in the country in defensive rebound rate, while they're number 2 in the country in offensive rebound rate. I do think Texas Tech can hang around, at least like narrow the margin in the rebound battle. And I think that's more than enough to be a team that Taylor can shoot his team out of this game, especially with Texas Tech they want to force isolation, and they have a ton of good defenders that can switch onto him and force him to take bad shots in this game. So I do like Tech, and they're going to be super hungry to come into this game. They don't have a marquee win yet. And I do think they are the better team in this matchup. And I think they'll be recognized a bit on the national stage after this game. So I do think there's some hidden value here with people not really knowing all that much about the Red Raiders just yet. And I'd probably bet this up to -3.
Yeah, I like the Texas Tech side in part because of Wade Taylor shooting them out of a game. I think Texas Tech has good defenders that can match up with him, and as you said, force him to take tough shots. And we already know he's not a super efficient guy, so if he's being forced to take tough shots, that efficiency is only going to go down unless he happens to have one of those days where it's like, wow, Wade Taylor is the best player in the country. But I don't expect that. I think Texas Tech does a good job limiting him. And as you said, I think Texas Tech does a good enough job on the glass to limit Texas A&M's opportunities, and they come out with a win here. I think they've been over or undervalued. Personally, I thought that the Aggies have been overvalued to start the year. I wasn't as high on them coming in. I think they started the season ranked 13th, and they lost to UCF early. But I haven't been. I just was never that high on them to begin with. I just don't think a team with Wade Taylor as their best player, with the variance that he has in his shooting percentages, I just think that it's too hard to rely on that. But on a side note, I feel like Kerwin Walton has been in college basketball for like 15 years, and he's only in year 5. He's 23. Um, seems hard to believe. I feel like he was at UNC a decade ago.
Yeah, he had a couple huge breakout games. I believe it was his freshman year at UNC, and I think that's kind of why his name has stuck around for a little while. You know, starting to get the Armando Bacot syndrome here. You know, we thought Bacot was around for at least 10 to 12 years, but Walton, he's actually huge in this game. Like, he's one of the reasons why, like, in the spot up game, in the catch and shoot game, like, he could kill this team. If he goes 3 for 3 or 4 for 4 to start the game, like, it's going to be really hard for A&M to come back with their lack of like elite shot making.
Yeah. Now you throw out Bacot there as a guy that felt like he was there 10 or 12 years. Just going to throw a couple names out there. Mitch Lightfoot, Perry Ellis.
Oh man.
Those guys played at Kansas for an entire NBA career, it felt like.
And how about Seth Towns, who started his career at Ohio State? He was around for what? He was actually around for 8 years, I believe.
Yeah.
And it felt like he was around for
2
30.
cycles of recruits, right? Like, he was playing college basketball, I think, when Jason Tatum was a freshman at Duke, and he didn't finish his college career until Tatum had won a championship in the NBA in year 7. Like, that just doesn't even make any sense. And the final game that we're on, UCLA is at Oregon. Oregon, obviously, off to that hot start at 9-0. The projected Torvik spread is Oregon -1.5. This line, based on where KenPom has these teams ranked, might even get a little bit higher, open a little bit higher, around 2.5 or 3. But it feels like Oregon's luck has to run out at some point. They've been very fortunate to come back in some games against some weaker opponents. They've been great, don't get me wrong, but they're coming off that win against Alabama last weekend. This seems like a good sell spot on Oregon against the UCLA team that we projected to be pretty high in the Big Ten. This game feels like more of a pick'em game. UCLA, obviously, they reloaded this offseason, and their defense looks like it's maybe one of the elite defenses in the country and might be able to give Oregon a tough time. They're hungry for a big win, and I like them in an underdog role. So if I were to be on any side of this game, it would definitely be on the UCLA side here, where they're likely to be a few point underdogs against the Ducks. But other than that, these are some of our favorite picks for this weekend. We'll be coming out with another episode early next week. But be sure to check out some of the articles and game of the day previews that we've been putting out. Those will be coming out again tomorrow and on Sunday. So keep an eye out for that. Join the Discord. Keep up with the Action Network account to track our bets. And we'll look forward to talking some more bets with you next time on Tuesday.